process. They keep working on it. I don't think we have a lot of answers or anything. So we need to really handle some of this legislation. That some of it is carryover. Also, some of it we have people who've driven in to testify, and we need to give them the opportunity to do that. So Heather, the first one, oh, are you making this live or?
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting a microphone.
Okay. All right.
I'll be right up.
So the first one we'll consider is commercial vehicle driving disqualification. We have to look at this and we have to get into conformance with, I believe we have to get match federal statutes with some of this. So Heather, that's the first one, the driver disqualification.
So, Mr. Chairman, as Heather gets ready to go, then on these other two bills, underneath the bill draft discussion and review, are primarily information bills being presented. Is it your thought to click through those two and do the same as we did on the radioactive bill this morning?
Well, Mr. Co-Chair, I think that we have people who showed up to testify on 37.6. And I would like to give them the opportunity to do that. They did take the time and effort to attend, and I feel we need to give them that. I know that Representative Henderson has worked heavily on that bill. And I think that Representative, is that a true bill draft or is it for information or?
It is.
Okay. And that was one of our interim topics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commission determines the positions required, training.
Okay.
Talk about it, and up or down.
All right.
And
So,
same on 157, just run through that bill and take a look at it.
and 157, Senator Pappas, I think you had indicated to me that that was an informational bill and that except if the committee decided they want to take it up, we'd take it up. Am I correct? Okay, and we'll get to that next. Well, third, actually. So Heather, if you would take us through 0040.6.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick note on the electric vehicle process update. The committee does have the agency's materials in case y'all were quite
Okay.
interested in that topic. And that was in the first packet of materials that was sent to you even before the special session.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is 22 LSO-0040, working draft 0.6, commercial vehicle driving disqualification. This bill draft amends the offenses that disqualify a person for life from driving a commercial vehicle. And so what it does, this bill draft goes into 31-7-305. And again, Title 31 are the transportation statutes. And in subsection D of this statute, there it indicates that the department shall issue regulations establishing guidelines and conditions under which disqualification for life under this section may be reduced. But then that's the existing language. This specifies that any person whose disqualification for life has been reduced under the section and who is subsequently convicted of another disqualifying offense under subsection C of this section shall not be again eligible for reduction under this subsection. Well, that says without all of the confusing section stuff is just that if you've been reduced, but then you go commit again, you can't have another reduction. And then in subsection D, this indicates that a person shall be disqualified for life from driving a commercial vehicle for one, and this was already existing, using a motor vehicle in commission of a felony involving manufacturer and several different drug instances. The new part that was added is paragraph 2, which is at the top of page 3, which is a person shall be disqualified for life from driving a commercial motor vehicle for using a commercial motor vehicle in the commission of any felony involving human trafficking under, and then the WS 6-2702 or 6-2-703. That's the Wyoming statutes that are human trafficking. this bill.
Questions for staff?
Question.
Senator Pappas.
On that last item where it's used in the commission of a felony involving human trafficking, I'm assuming that means we have drivers that drive trucks that they don't know what's in their vehicles. I'm assuming that's a felony if you know that you are transporting your human trafficking. I mean, if you're driving a truck and you don't know what the payload is in that truck, are you liable then? Are you barred for life?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas,
Heather?
I do not like to be the judicial branch of government on this. However, it seems as though the answer to that would be yes. That you would be liable. However, that said, that's not an unusual thing because this is also written to comply with and to be parallel with federal law. So I think you need to know perhaps what's in your truck.
Okay.
I don't know.
Other questions for staff? And also on that, remember that human trafficking under those two statutes. And we did a lot of defining under those statutes of what human trafficking is. So it isn't just having a person hiding in your truck trailer and not knowing it. There are some definitions in there. I remember we did a lot of work on that, but I can't tell you exactly what it says off the top of my head.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And I can get the Title VI if that would be helpful.
Okay, no, you don't need to.
Okay.
Okay, no other questions for staff? Anyone wish to, you have a question? Representative McGuire? I thought.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so we have seen this before, and I asked the exact same question that Senator Pappas, or the good senator, just asked. And that is whether or not we should put the word in knowingly in there. And I thought that one of the representatives of LSO looked at the federal statute and said that it would be acceptable to put knowingly in, that we would still be in compliance. And I'll just add, you could pick up a hitchhiker and not know, and then all of a sudden, the person's there could be a lot of complications. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody's hiding in the box in the back of your trailer. There could be circumstances that lead up to the point where somebody who's doing an enhanced prosecution could bring that up. So it's a pretty stiff fine for somebody that makes their living as a commercial truck driver. So I would encourage us, if we can, put the word knowingly in there to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McEwen, I thought you had your hand up too.
I just want some clarification on the law, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Jarvis, do you have 62702, 703 up?
Mr. Chairman, yes. So what's added is using a commercial, you disqualified for life for using a commercial vehicle in the commission of any felony involving human trafficking under 62702 or 62703. 62702 is human trafficking in the first degree, the penalty. And in subsection A of 702 is that the person intentionally or knowingly recruits, transports, transfers, harbors, receives, and there's a whole list of verbs of what they do, but it has intentionally or knowingly in the subsection A. And then 62703 is human trafficking in the second degree. And that the state of mind for that, because the state of mind is what the intentionally or knowingly is, the state of mind, or wait, not necessarily state of mind, sorry, that is a person recklessly recruits or transfers. So the states of that would be covered between the 702 and 703 are intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly do any of these recruiting, transferring, providing, and then there's a list of what they do. So if you, the whole slew of verbs, recruits, transports, harbors, receives, provides, whatever, and they have to, for the purpose of forced labor, servitude, sexual servitude of a minor. And there's, I'm reading it quickly. Is like sort of in violation of, and then there's some additional statutes. But as to the degree, those are the three.
Quick follow-up. Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
follow up, Senator.
I was going to ask you another question pertaining to this law. As it is, if you have a CDL, what are the limits when you get a DUI in your personal vehicle? Does that endanger the CDL? I have a couple of my constituents asking the question. And I think they believe it does. They're just looking for the limits. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jarvis, I think that probably maybe the colonel can answer that one.
Mr. Chairman, that's a great idea.
Colonel Haller, if you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. Senator McKeown, one does affect the other. So if an individual does have a CDL, but they're in their private vehicle in a non-commercial driving capacity and they get a DUI, it will affect the status of their CDL.
And are the limits
Follow up?
still the same, Mr. Chairman?
Colonel.
The limits while operating a non-commercial vehicle would be at the 0.08. Having said that, though the limits or the threshold is different, it would still affect the status, excuse me, of the CDL. But they are independent as far as the threshold of the impairment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. I think that answers also the question on those. So any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Any public comment? Anyone in the room on 22 LSO 0040.6? Heather, is there anyone in virtual land? Okay, one last time, public comment. That'll close public comment. Committee? Moved by co-chair, seconded by Pappas. Discussion? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just throw this out for conversation amongst the committee. It may be a conversation point to consider making this with regard to a disqualification for life, making it subject to a first degree. That way it's pretty clear cut that it really is knowingly and intentionally. I would just throw that out for conversation.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the representative makes a good suggestion. I'm trying to think of why that would weaken the bill or hurt anything at all if we just on line 1, page 3, put knowingly. And then, we referenced the statutes, and I think what the representative was suggesting is that we do not reference 703. Is that the second degree portion of that, or and I wouldn't have any problem if the representative made a motion including those two things. Maybe somebody understands something I don't.
Representative McGuire.
I hate to take more time. I mean, I would certainly invite asking a representative from either YDOT or law enforcement what their thoughts are. It's just, I mean, if some guy's making a living with their CDL and you have a lifetime prohibition, that's a big punishment. So.
Mr. Rossetti, a volunteer. Do you have something to say to enlighten us?
Mr. Chairman, one of the only ones that isn't sitting in the back row.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Representative
Rossetti, if you
McGuire.
would proceed, please.
Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for YDOT. This might be coercion and maybe there's some intent here as well. I don't know. Again, I think it is probably a policy decision here for the body, but again, what we're trying to do is make sure we meet the definition of 22 US Code 7102 definition for severe forms of human trafficking. And that definition reads, sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age, or the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, coercion, or the purpose of subjection or involuntary servitude, peonage, debt, bondage, or slavery. I think as we look at 702 and 703, 703 really does seem to read very similar to Part B of that definition. So I think from my perspective, looking at the way that 702 and 703 would match the US code, both 702 and 703 seem pertinent to the piece of legislation in front of us.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, Mr. Rossetti, what about, in your mind, does that do to the language if we put knowingly in front of that phrase?
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I believe if you look at the definition that's sitting already in 702, as Ms. Jarvis already outlined, that the word knowingly is already contained in Chapter 6. I don't know that it necessarily would harm anything, but again, I'm not an attorney, but I believe it's already covered, already sitting there in 702.
Okay, thank you. Good enough.
Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Any more public discussion? And Heather, I believe you said there was no one virtual on this. Okay, one last chance. Okay, I'll close public comment. Committee?
We did that. We moved the bill.
Yeah, we did move the bill. I'm sorry. You confused the daylights out of me. We moved it. Yeah, you did and seconded. Committee, work the bill. Anything on page 1? Page 2?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I have a problem with that disqualified for life discussion because the guy did something with drugs. It seems like we're punishing our CDL guys, even though they might not have done the drugs when they were driving the truck. I have a specific instance where the person waited his 10 years and applied for his CDL again and couldn't get his CDL. I don't quite know all the details of that thing, but this for life kind of troubles me. So I probably won't do anything now, but I need to do something about that at some point in time. Thank you.
Senator, just for clarification, are you talking about D as in David or E as in Edward?
Yeah, I think I'd talk about both of them.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, that begs the question. Senator brings up a good point. Is that purely under the Department of Transportation? I'm looking toward the director. Is that so? If I've had one of these disqualifications reduced and I apply for reinstatement, does that come under the Department of Transportation alone, or is that something that I've got to get from the courts?
Mr. Rossetti.
And in the case of the senator's description, what would keep me from being able to reobtain a CDL?
Mr.
If I've
Rossetti.
had that reduced.
I'm sorry. Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, Section D that's sitting here on the top of page 2 actually describes that process in that it allows the department to promulgate rules and regulations that would establish the criteria under which a person who essentially a lifetime ban is considered 10 years. So under certain offenses, you will get a lifetime ban, which is a 10-year ban, and you are allowed to reapply. We have established rules and regulations promulgated in accordance to the Public Rules Act. You can find that in Chapter 1 of driver's licenses and motor vehicle safety, specifically in Section 16. That outlines the criteria under which persons who have done offenses that required a lifetime ban could reapply for a CDL. The two offenses that are sitting there in Section E on lines 18 and then moving over to page 3, those two offenses are stipulated in federal regulation as if you are found guilty of those offenses, it is a true lifetime ban for commercial driving privileges. So there are two things. Those ones that we're adding here today are true lifetime bans underneath the federal rules. And then Part D does allow the department to promulgate rules to allow for a person to apply under other certain offenses.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything on page 2? Page 3? No amendments? Question being called. Heather, would you take roll, please?
This is a roll call vote for 22 LSO 00440.6, commercial vehicle driving disqualification. Senator Anderson. Senator Furphy. Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Excused?
Representative Burt.
Excused?
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire. Representative Obermueller.
And I believe he left.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, he voted aye.
Okay.
Representative Ahern.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Excused?
Co-Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon.
Aye.
That passes.
Yes. Mr. Co-Chair, Senator House?
Maybe
House.
if you want it, you got it.
Okay, let's start this one in the House. Okay. All right, next one for discussion is 22 LSO 0037.6, telecommunicator cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Representative Henderson, I know you've done quite a bit of work on this. If you want to join staff table, you're welcome to, but you're also welcome to stay there.
Well, I could save us a lot of time if you'd let me go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, do you want to present it,
I can, yeah. That'd be okay?
Ms. Jarvis? Okay.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee. Last meeting, we had quite a bit of testimony on this important subject. And we had a draft then. This has been updated. The draft then was perhaps a bit more vague. I mean, we could all maybe come down a little differently on how the words are put together. But since then, it's funny how you learn a lot about things once you have a couple of meetings and have some conversation. And we were told in Rawlins that it was going to cost thousands of dollars to do this. Turns out that's not quite the case. But what the good news is frankly, all this bill does is it highlights the critical role played in emergency response by a telecommunicator CPR. As you know, I sent you an email that highlights a summary, if you will, of the good work done by the governor's task force on emergency response services and the role of TCPR. And the executive branch is looking at going after some ARP funds for the emergency medical dispatcher piece, which is different from this. This is included in that. And it was verified that that's the case, but also we're better off than we thought we were in Rawlins. We have just 7 locations with about 45 employees who haven't got the training, the EMD or this. And the plan, as I understand an email from the governor's policy advisor, is their plan is to go for the ARP money, as I said, and then as a backup, there is some grant funds available from a source to fund the critical TCPR in these locations where it's needed. All this bill does is highlight in page 2 there, interest of policymakers in asking the commission to consider those positions and determine those positions that require this training. It's simply that. And I know we have good folks come to testify, but that's pretty much it, committee. And we can vote it up or down. And I sure appreciate the time to hear the testimony. To me, if it saves one life out in the middle of Wyoming, by someone being able to talk on the phone and ask another citizen of our state to do the right thing for their neighbor or their loved one or a stranger, even if you will, to get that important oxygen coming back to the brain, we don't have a matter of minutes. I think it's worth it. I mean, we all have 4 tires on our car, but we still carry a spare, right? So that's it. And I just invite the committee to take a good look at it and let's listen to the testimony and vote it up or down.
Any questions for the good representative? Representative, I do have one, and I just need clarification on this. And I may be remembering this wrong, but it sticks in my mind that something was said that we really don't need legislation to do this. It's already possible to do it without legislation. Am I correct, or am I not remembering that correctly?
Well, that was what somebody said, that, as they say, somebody also said it's going to cost thousands of dollars.
Okay.
But the line here where it says that we're asking the commission to determine those positions, I think is a policy decision. And that's all. If the commission, the folks who are appointed by our good governor to look at these important matters and make these decisions, they do all the time when they meet. If they determine, they look at it, they say, well, we don't have any positions right now that need it, I don't see no harm, no foul. But I think this lets people know how important we see this as the critical role that TCPR plays in our emergency response.
All right. So any other questions, committee? Senator Anderson.
This will forever be known as the 4 tires and a spare then, huh?
Okay. No other questions? All right. With that, I'll open the floor for public comment. Anyone in the room? Anyone in the room? Like I said, don't hesitate or you may lose your chance.
Thank you, Mr.
Please.
Chairman. Byron Odikoven, the Executive Director for the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. First, I want to say thank you to the good representative for the rewrite, if you will, from the bill that we saw in Rollins. The bill that we saw in Rollins was very concerning to sheriffs and chiefs, as well as the PSAP supervisors and to the state APCO NENA chairman, which is the Association of Public Communication Officers and the National Emergency Network for 911. President was very concerned how the wording was initially. This wording simply, as the good representative said, simply says, if needed, post can do something. Now, it's slightly more sophisticated than that, and the post would have to go through the rulemaking process, do the publication, go through the governor to have those rules all in place, which is not necessarily burdensome, but at least it's, just want to point out that it is of concern when we're talking about the 7 agencies, which would be Buffalo, Bighorn County, Lovell, Thermopolis, Niobrara County, Washington County, and Glen Rock PD are the 7 that have been identified through the health task force from the governor's office, where we looked at the ARPA funds to be able to fund the emergency medical dispatch for those 7 agencies, which includes CPR as the basic level and the basic tenet of that emergency medical dispatch certification. So the ARPA funds, it's an $86,000 request being included, or I hope it'll be included. The strike force is yet to meet and determine that outcome, at which point that will come to you in February, if I understand the process correctly, to approve as part of the final ARPA fund request. So there's still several hurdles in place for emergency medical dispatch in the process of becoming funded. You will have the last say, so to speak, on that one. And if it makes it that far, would encourage you, I apologize, thought I had that thing on silence. Encourage you to support that if it makes it that far. The fallback position, the initial fallback position is for the Helmsley Trust, is what was communicated to me by the emergency medical folks, have secured a grant from the Helmsley Trust to provide tele-CPR for all remaining agencies that do not have it now. So these 7 agencies, the state of Wyoming Emergency Medical Services folks are working with this. Depending upon how this all goes, they're poised and ready to provide that tele-CPR through the Helmsley Helmsley Trust grant process. So, Mr. Chairman, I guess it's kind of your call in terms of now how this bill is written is a simple process for the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission to promulgate rules for tele-CPR, which may be moot by the time you vote on this bill. If you've already voted for the funding for the ARPA, it'll be moot. If you vote for this bill before you do the ARPA, after you do the ARPA, the bill will be not necessarily necessary. So it's a chicken and the egg process, Mr. Chairman. Your pleasure.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Odekoven, thank you. I sense and feel a little bit of disagreement between us here a little bit. I guess my question would be what harm this bill would do, knowing that this funding situation has still got to go all the way through the Appropriations Committee, which ultimately decides how we spend the money in the state. 27 different steps or whatever we've got to go with the other bill. Sometimes it feels beneficial to me that we have billboard type laws. It was fascinating when we suggested that this may be part of the curriculum in the K through 12 education system. And of course, we had school districts not wanting us to tell them to put that in there. Right now, we have some agencies who don't appear to be up to speed on providing this kind of service, but we're assured that they're going to be. I guess I'm just trying to find a reason why we wouldn't want to go ahead and put this bill in place.
Mr. Odekoven?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess when you look at the list of the agencies involved, they are financially behind, if you will, in their ability to provide this. So that basic level of service that you described, they have not determined that they can properly fund without some either additional funding, either through a grant. Were it not for the grant and merely a statute, I would still wonder about their ability to provide the funding to get it accomplished with the statute. Mr. Chairman, I would have to check on that and their ability to do that, as we all wrestle with budget cuts, with downturn in the economy, assessed valuations and funds available. These are the very communities that are hit the hardest in that regard. So I think there'll be some concern within these communities, but by the same token, I'm sure they'll be lobbying you for the passage of the ARPA funds so they don't have to go through that route, would be my guess. But in terms of the question of is there a harm? Probably not, because it's Post has the ability to promulgate the rules. You're just saying that of all the training that Post does for once they set the standards for public safety, they must include CPR to boot or tele-CPR.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions, committee? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Byron, for for all you do for our good state. You bring a heck of a lot of expertise and clarity to the discussion. I don't know if you were at the governor's business forum here recently, but you know, we have a high suicide rate in our state, right? And unfortunately, it's in our schools as well. And one of the things that came up in a very good panel that they had during the forum was the role that TCPR could play, or CPR itself, the capability to provide CPR, as the good senator was just referring to, for those who may have inadvertently made the decision, or, you know, for whatever reason, made the decision to take their life, to try to revive them. And so I think there's other possibilities here that could come out as we work this through the process going forward. Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Rotokoven.
Mr. Chairman, I would have to rely on my communications supervisors. And I think there was testimony from at least two of them on the frequency that their personal experience within their community of delivering CPR through the EMD process, on how many times a year they do that versus how many times a year they do everything else. And it struck me that number for the CPR was relatively low. Having said that, I would totally agree with you. If it saves one time, somewhere, one place, then there's lots of things that are worth lots of things.
Did you want to follow up?
Just real quick. I just like to say, I absolutely agree with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of times when you start someplace like we did back in Rollins, I didn't know as much as I do now about this important thing. But I've learned so much about other things like suicide prevention or response, if you will, in situations that we cannot guess, we can't predict them. But we do know the fact is we have a serious suicide problem in our state. And if this helps that, I'm all for it. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Mr. Chairman,
Protocol?
but of course.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room? Welcome, Chris.
Chris Walsh, I'm the executive director of the Post Commission, and either today, answer the process of questions or the body may have.
Okay, thank you for being here. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the important things that I learned in the last couple of months on this is the need for resources. You know, we had a Zoom meeting with some key people in the department. Are there any needs that you can identify here for the community that are top of mind regarding resources in this important area as far as training at the academy?
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, the resources that we need, I believe, and this would be a better question.
I don't think your mic's on.
Mike?
Oh, there you
Okay,
go.
thank you.
All right, now it should be better, right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as academy resources, the best question, the Director Bain at the academy would be the one to offer the best. But I believe now basic training for dispatchers is paid for through the enterprise fund at the academy, whereas detention officer and peace officers are paid for by the state. So while there's a funding stream there, it's not a really good one. And right now, the dispatch basic training curriculum is being revamped to meet current needs. Dispatchers, when they get temporarily certified, they have 2 years before they have to go to basic training. That's unique among the certifications in the state, where other disciplines have 1 year before they can complete basic training. By the time that the dispatchers have gone to basic training, typically they've been on for 1.5 years and they've received the required basic training elements from their own agencies. And so what's being developed now is kind of that cross between basic training and advanced training that would be more relevant for the stage in their career that the dispatchers come in at. So resources at the academy for dispatch training, I could go down a long list on what would be very nice. They don't have radio consoles and that kind of thing, very basic equipment to teach dispatching. They teach the skills, they teach
the classroom type. My opinion, yes, there are plenty of things that could be provided at the academy that there's just not funding for to enhance dispatch training.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walsh, thanks for being here. And I didn't want to come off as not being sensitive to what Mr. Odenkoven is cautioning us on, and that is things do cost money. And it is difficult sometimes to include everything that we'd like to do. A module like this, if we were to determine that we really want this folded into what we do to train our folks that are on the phones out there, what would a module like this cost? I mean, what is the cost driver there to put even a minimal amount of cardiopulmonary training in there?
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't know what the cost would be to incorporate it, and I would assume that you're addressing incorporated into basic training. I think it would be manageable.
Okay. So there's a time commitment, certainly.
Co-Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yes, there is a time commitment. So right now, basic training for dispatchers is 80 hours long. And so when you add, you subtract, basically. So I don't know where there would be room to fit that in. And then, you know, some of it seems like, well, you just add a few more hours in the logistics of, you know, you've got an 80-hour course and we're going to add 4 hours now. Do you go for 2 weeks and come back for a half a day? Manageable, but I haven't worked out details on what that would look like to be able to give you a good answer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Walsh? Thank you, Mr. Walsh, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Odenkoven, do you want another bite at the apple?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, yes, sir.
Okay, because there are other people waiting, I believe.
I just wanted to add to Director Walsh's and remind the committee of part of the testimony in Rollins, and that is that the legislature removed funding for communications training several years ago. And that enterprise fund that's described is when local agencies pay the academy for communications personnel to attend. You pay for peace officer standing and you pay for detention officer standing, but the local agencies pay for communications training 100% themselves. So I want to provide that clarity. So in terms of understanding that, the question that the communication supervisor here locally had was, what would we do with the telecommunication training if my dispatchers are already, which they are, doing the emergency medical dispatch, of which tele-CPR already is? So would they be exempt from that training at the academy because they already are trained, or would they be going through it twice? So there's some logistics that would need to be worked out as well through the process of mandating it on one hand and providing it on the other, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just my understanding is we're just asking the commission to determine the positions that need it. So we're not mandating it, is my interpretation. But on the bigger scale, going forward, we spend all the money, whatever we do. And then the question is, how are we doing on the retention? I heard a report from somebody during that Zoom meeting that they had good people come get the training and then leave within 8 months. So this is sort of an ongoing thing, right?
Mr. Odenkoven.
Mr. Chairman, certainly. Thank you.
Anyone else, public testimony in the room? Okay. Oh, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Chairman,
Please proceed.
Mr. Co-Chairman Richard Garrett. I'm a Government Relations Director with the American Heart Association, and pleased to be able to comment to you today and grateful for your attention to this issue.
And of course, we covered this in Rollins. I was not able to be there in person, as you'll recall, but listened very carefully to all the concerns and advice that the committee provided throughout the course of that comment period, and have tried our best to respond and be responsive to the committee's requests. I'm particularly grateful to Representative Henderson for his participation throughout the summer to try to craft this bill in a way that will be the least demanding on resources, but the most responsive to need. And to that end, I think that we've created just one simple paragraph here that addresses exactly that. The committee may know that out of hospital cardiac arrest claims 600,000 lives in this country annually. About 350,000 of those episodes are reported through 911 calls to emergency responding agencies. In Wyoming, there are 1,001 out of hospital cardiac arrests annually. And so extrapolation tells us that about half of those events are called into 911 dispatch authorities. Out of those 1,001, if we even save one life through creating a process that will enable emergency dispatchers to coach people that are calling and asking for advice on how to revive somebody in the event of a cardiac episode, that to me is time well spent by this state. And I think an issue well worth your attention and well worth addressing through the commission. The commission is well able to address the particulars that have been raised as points of interest and concern during this comment period. We'd like to work with that commission too, to make sure that the guidelines that are established, if in fact they're needed, and acknowledging that the governor's task force has recognized this as an important issue. But if this statute, if this direction remains needed, we will be glad to work towards an effective implementation with the commission. It's correctly been pointed out that funding resources are available. The state's cost then is de minimis. The dispatch certification process cost is de minimis as well. So again, I'm grateful. It's a great day in Wyoming. I absolutely agree with a sign across the road here that says when regulations grow, freedoms die, but we're trying to create a regulation that will save a life. And I hope you'll agree. So with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Garrett? Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else in the room? Anyone else in the virtual world? Okay, with that, I'll close public testimony. Committee?
Second.
Okay, moved by Anderson, seconded by Henderson. Comments? Senator Bashir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if this bill costs us $86,000, $10, $1,000. I'm kind of lost. I've heard it's cheap, and then I've heard 86 quoted, and I just don't know what it is, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Henderson.
Well, that's where I was back in Rollins, but I can assure you that it's not thousands, it's hundreds for the TCPR. And here's the thing, in Wyoming, we have a lot of places already stood up, private businesses ready to provide that important CPR training. So I think that'll be fleshed out, as you know, in the fiscal note. I don't see that as costing us a lot of money here. I asked the commission to take a look at it, but they'll know, they'll go through that process.
Any other comments? Any amendments? Question being called. Heather, would you please call roll?
This is a roll call vote for 22 LSO 0037.6, the telecommunicator cardiopulmonary resuscitation bill. Senator Anderson. Senator Furphy. Senator McEwen. Senator Pappas. Representative Baker.
No.
Representative Brown.
Excused,
Representative Burt.
excused.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Excused. I think he left the vote.
Mr. Chairman, he left a vote of aye.
Representative O'Hearn. Representative Stivar.
Excused.
Co-Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
House or Senate, Chip? You want a Senate? No. Did you say you wanted to start at the Senate or on the House side?
Well, let's start that one in the Senate.
Okay,
What do you think?
fine. Okay,
I
we'll
don't
start
wanna-
that one in the Senate.
You know, you don't want to pack a horse with too much weight.
No,
You're already packed pretty full.
lay it on. Okay, next bill up, and I think it's more of a discussion topic rather than a full-blown bill. And I think we'll be using version 0.4. Now, Heather, I don't know if you want to present this as a bill or if we want to just discuss this. Senator Pappas, this is yours, so I'd ask your thoughts. Do you want to handle it as a bill or do you want to do it as a discussion?
Well, frankly, I had it as a personal bill. I'm not opposed to it becoming a committee bill, but that's up to the committee.
Okay.
What I will do right now is just explain this. I wanted to give the committee heads up on it. Heather, you planning on going through it? Do you want me to go through it? Let me just give some overview about the topic. And the topic is automated transport of cargo of goods, okay? And it basically deals with what are known as PDDs, or personal delivery devices, okay? A personal delivery device is sometimes referred to as sidewalk robots, delivery robots. They are small sized mechanisms, autonomous robots that will deliver packages for that last mile of delivery. So PDDs are intended generally for personal delivery of goods, but I can see that commercial delivery could also become available as well. There are many companies out there. I've been actually working with FedEx on this particular bill draft. They have a robot called the Roxo. I was going to actually show you a video of it, but because of time, I'm not going to do that. You can actually Google Roxo and ROXO and look at the video. There are others out there. Neuro deployed in Florida. Amazon has got their Scout, and I think there's a Starship that I think below in Wisconsin. There's others out there. So anyhow, this technology, while it's automated, is not the technology that we are looking at in an automated driving system. Okay, completely different. We are not looking at having independent robots out there. There's always someone in control of these robots. Typically, they operate on sidewalks and shoulders. They come in all different sizes. They range from anywhere from 2 to 6 feet in height, and weight about anywhere from 40 to over 500 pounds. They're different sizes of these things. They range in speed from 8 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. They allow for a contactless delivery. So this thing will pull up to your house, would notify you it's outside. You put in a code when you get to it, and the door's open, and you get your package, and it goes on its way. So it's meant to help that same day supply chain demand delivery. Right now, there are 18 states that have passed legislation to this effect. I believe there's about 6 or 7 that are actually have pending legislation. But these things do operate in the right of way, and they are like pedestrians, treated as pedestrians. So the legislation that it's brought to you is intended to help that supply chain and the last mile of delivery. And with that, we're creating a new article, Article 18 in our statute. And with that, I'll let Heather just kind of quickly run through the bill.
Mr. Chairman, this is 22 LSO-0157, working draft 0.4. And this bill draft, so it regulates the operation of these personal delivery devices that Senator Pappas was describing. It preempts inconsistent local regulation and provides some definitions and makes the provisions part of the Uniform Act regulating traffic on highways. That's the chapter that this new article is going in. So on page 2, it are the definitions, and this defines an agent as being a director, officer, or employee of an individual that is authorized to act on behalf of a business entity, because this particular bill draft specifies that a business entity is who needs to operate one of these. Or pardon me, an agent is who needs to operate one. This article makes sure to clarify that a pedestrian area includes a sidewalk, crosswalk, school zone, or safety zone. Paragraph 3, this is the definition of one of these devices that Senator Pappas was describing. And so it means a ground-based device. And that's included because one of the reviewers asked me if these were flying. They're on the ground at least points at this point. And it's a ground-based device that is used for transporting cargo and goods in a pedestrian area or other area as provided in 31.5.1805. That's where we'll get to as far as where they can operate.
And Heather, that probably should be 1804.
But that may have changed as we were dividing. Thank you. Most likely, yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you. That probably was an amendment along the way. Thank you. Subparagraph B is that it's a ground-based device that is equipped with automated driving technology, including software and hardware that enables the operation of the device with the remote support and supervision of a human, and does not exceed 550 pounds, excluding the cargo and goods. So that's what one of these devices is and the parameters surrounding it. 31-5-1802, the device operation. This specifies that these delivery devices need to be operated in a manner that complies with this law and the provision, complies with the provisions of this article that are applicable to pedestrians, because this article in the existing statutes has some rules that say pedestrians need to walk here, there, and whatever, unless the provision cannot by its nature apply to an automated device and to the provisions of this article that's being created. A personal delivery device that's operated under this article shall also yield or not obstruct the right of way to all other traffic, including pedestrians, and it shall not unreasonably interfere with other traffic, including pedestrians. And then one of these that's operated under this article shall also be marked and equipped as required. And this, I believe, is correct, 1805. And if it's operated at night, it needs to display the lights that are required in 31-5-1805B. That's the equipment provision of this particular law. And then also they need to comply with any applicable regulations adopted by a local authority that are not inconsistent with this article. And that that it shall not transport hazardous materials unless placarded, and those are those hazardous material sign things that you see. So it needs to be labeled if it's transporting something like that. and it shall be operated, monitored, and controlled as provided in this very next section that we'll talk about. And oh, and there, it does clarify that a personal delivery device that's operated under this article is not considered a vehicle, so it doesn't need to comply with the registration and titling requirements of Title 31. Now, the operator of a personal delivery device shall only be operated by an individual who is all three of these: an agent of a business entity, a human, and capable of monitoring or exercising remote physical control over the navigation and operation of the device. So when Senator Pappas was describing that they're remote controlled and operated the whole time, that's how these are. Subsection B indicates that when a personal delivery device is being operated, that the business entity that the agent represents is considered to be the operator of the device for the purposes of liability and for assessing compliance with traffic law, except that if an agent operates a personal delivery device in a manner that's outside of the scope of employment. So that's sort of the traditional respondeat superior laws that a business is liable for its employee unless they're operating outside of the scope of the employment. And then subsection D on page 6 of this section is just is specifying that an individual is not considered to be the operator of a delivery device solely because they request a delivery. So someone who requests delivery by one of these devices, they're not the operator. Now 31-5-1804 on page 6, the areas of operation. A personal delivery device that's operated under this article shall only be operated. So the first one is in a pedestrian area at speeds not to exceed 12 miles per hour, or in an area that is not a pedestrian area on the shoulder of a street or highway, proceeding in the same direction as motor vehicles at speeds not to exceed 20 miles per hour. And then the subsection B just indicates that it shall not be operated on an interstate highway. And then on page 7, 31-5-1805, this is the equipment that was referred to in the previous section, or the previous section. And A just specifies that these need to be equipped with a marker that clearly states the name and contact information of the business entity owner and a unique identification number for this device, and that they need to be equipped with a braking system that enables the device to come to a controlled stop. So that's some basic equipment at a minimum they need to have. And also, if it's operated at night, that they shall have lights on the front and rear that are visible and recognizable under normal atmosphere conditions from 1 to 500 feet away, and directly in front of lower beams of vehicle headlights. So it may be that there will be some additional equipment that might be required, but at a minimum, it's this A and B right here. And then at the bottom of page 7 is 31-5-1806 that specifies, actually, as it moves to the top of page 8, that a local authority shall not regulate the operation of a personal delivery device on a street or highway or in a pedestrian area in a manner that's inconsistent with this article, including limiting the hours of operation or areas of operation. But it does not affect the authority of a local authority to enforce the laws of the state relating to the operation of the device. And then the 31-5-1807, the requirement for insurance is that a business entity that operates one or more of these devices shall maintain an insurance policy that includes general liability coverage of not less than $100,000 in any one accident for damages arising from the operation of the device. Then section 2 of this bill, it just goes into the definitions of the definitions for the Uniform Act regulating traffic on highways, this particular section, and to specify that this act includes these new inserted sections.
Okay. Heather, thank you very much. Committee questions of Ms. Jarvis? Any questions on any part of the bill? Okay. Thank you, Heather. Oh, excuse me. Now we have a couple. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read through this bill, I'm wondering, wouldn't it be legal to be doing this already? Do we have any laws that make us using this illegal? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, the operation of these devices, I'm not sure whether we have these already or if someone could do them. I think it may be that they already exist, and that it may be that they are not needing to follow any particular rules at the moment. And so I believe that this would specify a few places where they could be operated, because I believe in theory, maybe if they are operated, they might be going down the street right now.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think they may be allowed to do it. The thing is we want to make sure we cover public safety here and include a new article that deals with them so that we can have some control over these things running in the pedestrian right away or on the shoulder of a road. Frankly, I think if you saw one running out there, I don't know what law enforcement would do. Would they consider it a vehicle? Would they consider it I have no clue. That we don't have anything on the books, and that's all this effort is to get it on the books and to provide some sort of regulation and some sort of minimum standards for these things, because they're coming. As I said, every state to the west of us have enacted it, and many out to the far east of us. 18 states have already got this on their books, and 5 or 6 states are pending legislation. So it's coming to everybody. And so I think everybody realizes we need to put these on the books so that we can start controlling them a little bit. That's my take on it.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the 18 states. Did they put these in because, and the $100,000 insurance, was that enough to justify putting these rules into effect and covering the personal for the people out there, our public?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
I actually haven't gone to all the states to see all the different variations in the laws. Some states, certainly, I think 2017, Virginia was the first state that did it. And ever since then, everyone has changed it. And some of them, like Pennsylvania, have come back and they've changed. I believe they had a smaller, lighter unit, and then found out that they needed a bigger unit. I would imagine something out here in our winds, we would need something a little heavier than 40 pounds, might blow away in the wind. This bill is looking for a 550-pound one. A lot of states have gone in that range. But to actually, I have not taken the time to go to all the individual states and see what type of insurance regulations that they have enacted. I know that I've been working with FedEx, and FedEx has been, I believe we have some FedEx people online. I'll let them speak during public comment. But they have been shepherding a lot of legislation through, so maybe they can answer that question for you. But certainly I know that it's different in every state. It's not the same exact particular piece of legislation. I know that for a fact, but I haven't done the research to find all the differences in all the states.
Representative or Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having a hard time visualizing this unit that's going 20 miles an hour and in city traffic. I think I said I saw somewhere where it's 550 pounds is the limit on it. I'm having a hard time visualizing this cargo unit. Is it a flatbed that is just automated that is carrying this cargo? I was just in Phoenix and there's all kinds of autonomous vehicles running around, but they're sure not 550 pounds. They're more like a regular vehicle. So I don't quite understand what we're targeting here.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, we certainly could ask staff to pull up a YouTube video if you want to see one, but no, it's not a vehicle like you go in Phoenix and see a Waymo vehicle. That's an autonomous vehicle that's used to ferry passengers. Okay, it looks like there's one right there.
Oh.
Yeah, why don't you run that little video? Yeah,
Hmm.
so it just goes down the sidewalk, delivers a package to your home, opens up.
Gee, great.
This is Roxo that FedEx has. This one actually will climb up a step, so many others won't do that, but it opens up, delivers your box. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
That little back boy goes 20. Okay. How about
It-
Senator
it-
McEwen.
But in our statute, it goes 20 on, not more than 20 in the on the road shoulder. If you're on a sidewalk, not more than 8 miles per hour by our statute.
Mr. Chairman,
McEwen.
and I'm certainly not trying to be difficult, but as I read through this bill, if I had a remote controlled dump truck this size and I wanted to drive it across the street to my neighbor with an apple pie or something in it, I could be subject to laws now. Just as long as, I guess if it's over 550 pounds to deliver the apple pie, I'm gonna be fine, but I think if we're gonna do this, we probably got to define it a little better, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
I think we're just looking at commercial entities making deliveries with this. If you got a personal robot, again, I don't know what law enforcement will do. If you're causing havoc in the right of way, they may shut you down there too. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, not if
Mr.
there's an apple
Co-Chair.
pie involved. I'd kind of like to get on that list.
I think we're digressing quite a bit here, so. Committee, any other questions for Ms. Jarvis or Senator Pappas at this time? Okay, any public comment in the room? Yes, Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, a couple comments. This is pretty new to even the department. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services, YDOT. I do think broadly, to your point there, Senator McEwen, I don't believe that this is probably illegal as it stands now, but I do think this is probably a good framework to get the discussion started. And I think it shows how when the private sector does do this innovation, we as the legislative and executive branch often struggle to kind of keep up with them. There is one thing, there are a couple of things in here though, too, that I would say. I think one of the things, and again, I don't want to speak to the senator's intent as he's moving through and trying to pass this legislation, but I think they're on the bottom of page 7 and moving on to page 8. The idea that the local authority can't do something to restrict this type of activity is probably an important thing for this group to consider. I can think of, there are probably some places where some city ordinances do restrict like bicycles on a sidewalk, for instance. That's not uniform throughout everywhere. But I think, a downtown authority could make a decision like that. And then, a large company like this wouldn't be able to deliver packages in that manner, So again, that's a policy decision that I think you guys will have to wrestle with, whether or not it's appropriate to have that decision made at the state level rather than the local level. But I do think that provision in here is probably an interesting thing for you guys to consider. I do think it does also seem intentional that we're not treating these as vehicles. I don't really have an opinion on that per se. It does in many respects make sense that we're not doing that. But again, I think that's a policy decision for you guys. Conceptually, I think this is probably a pretty good framework as a start. I don't see a whole lot of conflict from our end as a department if this was something to move forward where we would have a whole lot of heartburn. That'd stand for any other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas?
just to Mr. Rossetti's comment on the requirement not to regulate the operation of the personal delivery vehicle on a street or highway in a pedestrian area. It's in a manner inconsistent with this. So they can pass regulations, local regulations, as long as it's not inconsistent with this. That's all that says. We want to have some consistency. We don't want to say one community can outright ban it because they don't want it. Those are the kind of things we want. But, you know, they may limit the time of day, or they may, I don't know what they may or may not do. Of course, there it says including limiting the hours of operation, but I mean, there may be things that they may want to include that are, as long as they're not inconsistent with this statute, then I think we're okay with the locals being able to have their say.
Other questions for Mr. Rossetti? Mr. Rossetti, thank you. Anyone else in the room? Okay, not seeing anyone else in the virtual realm. Go ahead and oh, well, you'll have to wait now. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just, I had my hand up and I just thought I better sign on in case I missed the opportunity, but thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Yaden. I'm Western Region Manager of State and Local Government Affairs, representing FedEx Corporation and its nearly 450 employees and contractors based in Wyoming. Thanks for the chance to talk with you all about this. First of all, FedEx is grateful to Senator Pappas for introducing the proposed draft legislation. We do believe it's certainly a very exciting new technology, and certainly hoping that Wyoming continues as it has been to embrace innovations such as PDDs. And if you don't mind, I'll call them PDDs because it rolls off the tongue. Really for us, it is exactly as Senator Pappas mentioned, the rapid expansion of e-commerce over the last several years, not to mention online shopping, and now the addition of fast delivery. It creates quite a bit of challenge for the industry and our society as a whole. And as you all are experiencing as well as I am, even more prevalent with the challenges we continue to face due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But with that comes the demands of fast delivery. You have traffic congestion and pollution add up as a result of this e-commerce and fast delivery, the volumes increasing too. On the industry side, we're facing a shortage of drivers, which continues to be a problem for the industry as a whole. And the last mile delivery from stores and warehouses to businesses and consumers is the most complex and costly task in the supply chain. So with that, we saw the potential, the PDD as a tool in the last mile tool belt, if you will. The draft bill as proposed would allow PDDs to serve businesses and consumers in the state, including what we hope is our form of technology, amongst others, our next generation personal delivery device, Roxo. And I'm happy to talk more about Roxo too, and actually have one of our technical folks to answer questions, but didn't want to delay your discussion. All I would say is PDDs are certainly a viable option to deliver goods in a way that reduces human contact, which we continue to hear is a growing interest, or of growing interest, but at the same time offering a new, fast and efficient service. And technologies like PDDs are now in the forefront of the supply chain, hopefully giving businesses like FedEx and others the ability to provide last mile delivery in a safe and time sensitive way. And if I can, just to answer a couple of points relating to the size, the language that you see is language that we have addressed in other states, as Senator Pappas has mentioned. This language allows for a broader range of technology. I guess I'll put it that way. Senator Pappas mentioned other forms, whether it's Amazon or Neuro or others. I think what you're going to find is over time, the technologies are going to continue to evolve in size. In our case, ours is a larger PDD, but part of that rationale is it's based on the iBot electric wheelbase system or wheelchair system that was designed or invented by Dean Kamen, who also was the inventor of the original Segway personal transporter. That electric wheelchair base has successfully completed over 10 million safe miles. We like that base, as you can see, excuse the noise in the background, have certain benefits, including a larger base, more stable, allows, for example, the ability to navigate steps and different types of terrain. So we saw that for our purposes of pickup and delivery in urban and suburban areas as being an important attribute. So, but having said that, many forms of PDD technologies, we believe this language that you have in your draft bill allows a variety of technologies to be incorporated under the umbrella of a personal delivery device, as you mentioned, for commercial use. Thank you for allowing me to speak on the bill, and glad to answer questions. And again, if you have questions about Roxo, also have with me Tess Sutton from our Roxo team, who's available to answer any harder questions than I'm able to answer.
Committee, any questions for Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question about what other states have done to address the potential misuse of these devices. Thank you.
Mr. Yaden?
I can't say I've specifically seen language addressing misuse, and I would attribute that to the way the technology works because of the use of the teleoperator, that concept. The teleoperator is in direct contact with the device, although the device does work autonomously en route. That teleoperator is available to intervene at any time, and they are also able to observe, the bots in progress. So I'm not aware of a specific provision in law addressing any of the abuse issues, but again, it's because of that connectivity with the teleoperator, I think is the control factor.
Other questions? Senator McEwen.
Mr. Chairman, I'm really curious why a company would want to be regulated when they're already not regulated. Seems to me like we're trying to fight regulations and now they want to be regulated. So I'd like to know what they gain out of us passing legislation on something they could already do right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yaden?
Well, the way you word it, I have to agree with you that we're certainly, not in the business of asking for regulations. I guess I would preface this by saying, because of new technology and the trends in some cases, I guess, fear of people of new technologies, our approach is to come in and at least address that up front. We're not the type to show up with something and then later be told you were wrong for doing that. We tend to be more forthright in our approach to things. If we're going to introduce something, we want to make sure that we're doing it properly. As you know, FedEx has a great reputation and we stand by that. So something as new as a personal delivery device in Roxo, and knowing that others, by the way, are also introducing technologies, and in some case, they're attempts to create law. We just felt it was important to at least create a framework to operate in a known fashion and known and I guess in a proper legally controlled environment, without, as you have mentioned, we're not asking to be overregulated, but I think we wanted to provide a framework. At least that's the idea.
Other questions? No other questions? Thank you, Mr. Yaden, very much. And I don't think anyone had, Senator.
This model that we saw on the tube there looked like it might be a little slow to deliver to Recluse and Lysite, some of our rural areas. I'm assuming you're just going to use this in the highly suburban areas, if you're going to use it in Wyoming.
Mr. Yaden?
Well, I have Tess also with me. I know, Tess, you might be able to speak more to the specifics of where, but I can tell you that, when we look at the application of the device, we're going to look at based on need and issues like congestion or volume of the type of business we're talking about, because we are talking about same day, last mile type delivery within a small radius. Tess, do you want to add anything to that or anything that you can think of?
No, I think one of the biggest things to think about for personal delivery devices is that most of them are going to be used by businesses, and they'll be stationed at business locations and then perform deliveries from that business location. I think one of the things that gets confused just because you think about the FedEx model is that you think about the big FedEx trucks and they go to a hub location. Personal delivery devices are definitely, as Mike referred, they're meant for shorter distances, and they will be located at these different locations to be able to deliver out directly from the company using the device.
Tess, could I ask you to identify yourself just for the record, please?
My name's Tess Sutton, and I'm a program manager for Roxo at FedEx office.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Sutton? If you have a technical question, here's your chance. Nope, I guess not. Oh, okay. Ms. Sutton, thank you very much. Mr. Yaden, thank you also. I don't see any other questions for you.
Thank you.
Hang in there. We may have some.
Oh,
thank you. Colonel Haller.
Mr. Chairman, my apologies for walking a little slow. Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. Enforcement was brought up a little earlier, and I just wanted to address this. And the word framework, I think, is a good word. From the perspective of these devices traveling on roadway streets, shoulders of highways, and things of that nature, I think that this is a good framework. Again, consistency throughout the state provides some direction.
Any questions for Colonel Haller?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, could you possibly address the implications of the misuse? Because as we see, initially, this may be big corporations, but it may start to par down to, maybe food delivery and that sort of stuff, where local companies are investing the money in these vehicles to be able to transport. So who would be criminally liable if someone were to transport something illegal with one of these? Would that be set through a statute, or would that be something we'd have to contain in our legislation?
Colonel, want to take a shot at that one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker. So I'm going to take that in two different stages. The first one is, this kind of reminds me of the bicyclists, and then we had to start. Some cities and towns had to start making bicycle paths just because of the demand and the use of those. At some point in time, it did cross my mind with increased use of these in certain locations that may drive additional need for creating paths for these particular vehicles. I guess time will tell. On the second one, with actual criminal violations or ongoing criminal activity, if we've thought of it, it's probably already being used that way to some degree. And again, I think it would go back to the individuals responsible. This could pose some investigative challenges, but it would be run like any other investigation. Back to those that were responsible for it, who had physical control over it to put whatever was criminal evidence or in violation in that particular device, and of course who was receiving it as well. So I think it would be looked at much like any other criminal violation intent. and then all of the factors that go into that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I have a follow-up?
Follow up? Go ahead.
Yeah. So this bill doesn't contain any sort of penalties or anything like that. Would you suggest that it need to be outlined in statute or through rules and regs?
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, I believe that the laws that are spelled out for other criminal activity are sufficient. In other words, with these devices not being physically driven by somebody on board, I don't see that being a big concern.
Okay, Senator Pappas.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is not any different than any other mode of delivery we have right now. If you get a package delivered to you by FedEx or by Amazon or by UPS or by any delivery service, there are laws that we have on the books that prohibit certain things being distributed via these different methods. So this is no different. This is just a delivery method. Now, if you break the law and you send narcotics through this, you're just going to have to, if you get caught, you're subject to the laws that we already have on the books. There's for this particular framework, as we were just talking about, to allow the operation of these, any system can be misused and abused. And we have other laws on the books that will deal with that.
Any other questions for Colonel Howler? Colonel, thank you. Okay, any other public comment from anywhere?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify on the fact that the previous or Representative Baker indicated that this particular bill draft does not include a penalty, but it's in a section of laws that have a penalty section for the violation of, the regulation of traffic on highways. And so there's a section for that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, with that, I'll close public testimony.
So,
Committee,
Mr.
great
Chairman,
information. Does anyone desire to do anything?
so Mr. Chairman, that's our presentation of the bill. It was a personal bill. Be glad if the committee would like to carry it, but that's completely up to the committee.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I do not make this motion in an attempt to overshadow the great work of my friend in the Senate. But it sure seems appropriate that the Transportation Committee would throw its support behind this bill. And so I guess I would make that motion that the Transportation Committee carry this bill forward to the session.
As a committee bill.
As a committee bill, right.
Okay. Moved, seconded by Anderson. Committee discussion. Okay. Not seeing any. You wish to work the bill? I guess so. Page 1.
Mr. Chairman, does that require a vote, that motion, or are we just in agreement committee that we take this forward? We need
I'm unclear, so
a voice vote on a motion.
voice vote, that you're
Make it a
right.
committee.
Yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, you're in part of the process. So it was moved and seconded for the committee to consider it. And so now you're in the process of discussing it and working it. And then there will be a roll call vote as to whether to sponsor it as a committee bill.
Oh, okay.
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 So page 3. Senator Pappas, I think on page 2, line 18, you had a technical correction.
Yeah, that should be 1804.
Okay. Right. Page 4. Page 5.
Page 4, let me back up. Can I make one change on line 11? Can you strike the word unless and include instead of unless and required to be placarded? Which is slightly
Okay, there's a
different,
second.
which is slightly different in meaning.
Yep.
You know, if it's required to be placarded, not unless it's placarded.
Amendment was moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the amendment? Question on the amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman, can I
sorry.
get some clarification on that? So the paragraph says that it shall not transport hazardous materials. So then I'm just confused on, so they shall not transport hazardous materials and then shall be placarded. So is it
And
shall not be placarded or shall not transport them and shall be, I'm just unclear on the amendment because
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Pappas.
it should read, not transport hazardous materials regulated under the Federal Hazardous Material Transport Act and required to be placarded under. So okay.
Mr.
not be
Chairman, shall
transported.
they not transport them or shall they transport them but be placarded? I'm just uncertain on what you're saying.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So it seems like the two statements conflict with each other. One says,
Okay, let's
Cannot.
just leave it as is. I'll deal with it later.
okay,
Yeah, leave it as it is.
okay, the amendment is withdrawn, if that's okay to the second. Okay. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Representative Senator Purphy.
Page 8. Line 4.
Mike,
It says including limiting the hours of operation or areas of operation.
you need to turn on your mic, please.
Okay, on page 8, line 4, and the first part of 5, where it says including limiting the hours of operation or areas of operation. So this is regarding local regulation. And what I'm concerned about, the locals may have issues in certain areas where they want to limit operations of these devices or the hours of operation. We don't know that. And for the state to override the locals on this is a concern to me. So my amendment is to eliminate that section.
Is there a
Whole
second on the
section?
amendment?
No. Full section? Section 4 on line
Line
4 and the operation on line 5.
Okay, Senator Purphy, could you repeat that for the rest of the committee? What is your amendment?
My amendment is on page 8, line 4, eliminating completely line 4, and on line 5, eliminating operation.
Everyone clear on that?
So,
Second.
yeah, okay.
Okay. Second, any discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
again, trying to get consistency across the state. You know, they could theoretically limit, you know, if a community did not want this service at all, they theoretically limit it to 1 hour a day, or they could be discriminatory and say, well, we're not going to deliver to the bad pound of town, or we're not going to deliver here or there. I think there's a reason why it was put in there in other statutes in other states. I think before we eliminate it, I think we ought to discuss it a lot in depth. I just assume not eliminate it now. Maybe we could talk about it and come up with something different, but I think we need some consistency because certainly limiting the hours. I don't know why we want to limit the hours of a delivery company. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. My 2 cents worth.
okay, Representative O'Hearn was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
I think that's what line 5 is saying. does not affect the authority of the local authorities, peace officers, and local jurisdictions to regulate that as they see fit. And I think that supersedes taking out line 4. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm at is there may be sections of a community that what they want is they want to limit these devices. I'm thinking, first of all, a nursing home section that the local communities would have to vote on taking this out. But there could be sections that we don't know about in a local community. So if they want to limit where it's delivered to for some reason that we're not aware of, I'm just saying this says they can't do that. A local community can't limit where these devices are going. And I don't like to take away their authority to be able to do that. The rest of it says they have to comply with the rest of the state regulations on where these devices can be sent to. But we're taking away local authority. If there's some section of town, they don't want this for whatever reason that I'm not sure I can think of a reason at this point, but I just do not like limiting local authority on these devices completely. So that's where I'm headed with this.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, on and for the amendment, I can think of a couple instances. The University of Wyoming at Laramie has a football game every once in a while, and the sidewalks are completely covered with pedestrians. And they sure wouldn't want to have one of these machines running up and down that sidewalk with the pedestrians there. We also have a situation in Cheyenne where they have a little rodeo there, they claim is a big one, that they cover the sidewalks pretty heavy. I bet they wouldn't want these machines running up and down the sidewalks. But I want to leave that to them, not for us to decide. I want to leave it to local control. So that's why I'm for this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, on and against the amendment. Again, I think that then that defeats the ability to have this consistent across the state. I mean, if a community just didn't want to have it, it could limit it to 1 block somewhere and 1 hour a day. I mean, then it takes it away. But I'll let the committee decide. But I think limiting a business's ability to deliver packages anywhere and limiting when they can deliver it, I think that's a business decision. It has been for all other types of delivery, right? We're delivering to you on Sundays now, right? Why don't we limit that? Can a municipality limit, say, okay, we don't want no delivery company to deliver on a Sunday. We don't have any laws that tell us to do that. Why are we limiting it here? I just don't think we're being very consistent.
Representative Henderson.
On and for the amendment, reference the rodeo, we do have a nice parade 3 times that week. There's things going on at the local level, changing all the time. I don't think we have enough information at this level to set the policy that we're going to set the hours of operation to. I don't think we get in the way of the local businesses, because the local businesses are going to adapt and have an input dialogue, if you will, with the local government agencies. So, on the floor.
Senator McEwen.
I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me like we're trying to legislate how FedEx runs its business. And I don't know why we'd want to do that. They have their own requirements and liabilities. And if they're dumb enough to run that down the sidewalk during a football game and hurt somebody, they're gonna get in trouble. And I mean, they're smart people. They're gonna control themselves, just like I control what I do in my business. And I'd be quite offended if we're discussing, I deliver some groceries, and if the state told me where I could and couldn't, had to and couldn't deliver groceries, I'd be upset. We're getting our noses into something that should be private business, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Other discussion on the amendment? Okay. All right, and I'll repeat the amendment, just so I'm clear. Page 8, line 4, starting with the word including through the rest of that line, and on line 5, operation. So the amendment is to delete those. That word. So I can already tell, so I'll ask for a show of hands. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. 3, 4. Okay, all opposed to the amendment? 3, 4, 5. Okay, the amendment fails.
Mr. Chairman, I was an aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were an aye?
Yes.
5, 5. 5, it fails.
What did Jerry have to say?
Mr. Chairman, that is one of the challenges of a proxy. He has no proxy for this amendment.
So it fails on 5 to 5.
He didn't anticipate that?
No, he didn't. Okay, so page 8, anything else? Page 9. Okay. Committee?
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Heather, would you please call the roll?
This is a roll call vote for 22 LSO 157.4 automated transport of cargo or goods. Senator Anderson?
No.
Senator Furphy?
Aye.
Senator McEwen?
No.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Representative Baker?
No.
Representative Brown?
Excused?
Representative Burt?
Excused?
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermueller voted aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Excused?
Co-Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon?
Aye.
Okay. Passed. You want to start this one on the Senate?
Let's start this one on the Senate side.
Okay. All right. The next one for our consideration is, let's take literally 2 minutes if anyone needs a break, and then we will go with county road construction maintenance funding. Senator Anderson. Senator Anderson? Are you waving goodbye or do you want recognized? Oh. Okay. County road construction and maintenance funding. I took like 2 minutes. If anybody needs to get up and Back together. I will provide one order. And that no one else is allowed to leave. We are at the minimum requirements for a quorum. The rest of you have to stay here. You didn't escape quick enough. You're stuck
To the end.
because if you leave, we're done.
We're all leaving.
Okay? All right. So the next bill for our consideration is 22 LSO 0192.4 County Road Maintenance Fund Amendments.
Mr. Chairman,
And
shall I start?
Heather, please start and just hit the changes. I think we discussed this the last session or the last time we met. And I think we should all have a good idea of what we're talking about here. If you remember, this involved the purchase of road graders by the counties. And I think we're still on that. So if you just hit the high points, that'd be great.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, yes. So this bill both increases the threshold to require competitive bidding of the county, and it also has that road grader limit on how much a county can spend on it. So you'll find on page 2 where it goes into 24, that's the highways section of the statutes. 24-2-110 that talks about this county road fund or county road and maintenance fund. And it simply changes it from $50,000 to $75,000 as far as the threshold for when a county has to go out for bid. And then the bill in the subsection that talks about the county road standards committee, it amended the name for, as the name has been changed, of the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming in that one paragraph. And then this bill inserts a new subsection, subsection J, that simply specifies that the county road construction and maintenance fund, a county may designate not more than $100,000 of its unobligated share of the prior fiscal year's county gasoline license tax allocation. That's how this fund is created and propagated toward the purchase of road or motor graders.
Okay, thank you. Wait, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, and it's just created by the gasoline license tax actually allocations, not the diesel.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, I believe that is the case, but certainly will make sure to double check.
Ms. Jarvis, I think what the senator is getting at is instead of gasoline, unless that's used in other sections, should that be fuel tax? Am I correct, Senator?
Well, Mr. Chairman, or we leave it alone and they can spend from their diesel account.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will look into that while the committee is talking. I believe it is correct, but certainly would want it to be fuel or gasoline, whichever is accurate for how the fund is created, and I will look into that.
All right, thank you. Okay, committee, any other questions? We should be familiar with this. We had a long discussion at the last meeting on it. So with that, no, I see no other questions. I will open it for public comment. And I already have 2 people at the table who are arguing over who comments first, I guess. So either one of you, just identify yourself and have at it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of Wyoming County Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity. We were actually just discussing quickly an answer to Senator Anderson's question. The funding for the County Road Construction and Maintenance Fund actually comes from 2 sources. The primary one is the diesel tax, but the other source is a portion of severance tax. You'll remember the conversation yesterday, that under the cap amount, that $155 million, a portion of that, which equates to just under $4.5 million, goes to the County Road Construction and Maintenance Fund and is distributed across the county. So wanted to make sure that I responded to that question. Mr. Chairman, from the conversation that we had in Rollins, you may remember that I had indicated that there were a couple of issues that we were continuing to work on. So Ms. Ligursky and I have been doing that work. And that's the proposed amendment that I've provided to the committee. All of the changes that I'll review are on page 3. So there are really 4 issues that the amendment addresses.
Committee, just a moment. Yep, Mr. Raymond. Committee, you should have this staff lead in front of you during our quick break. So go ahead, please continue.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the first one is to page 3, essentially lines 6 through 10. When we made the request for the change on page 3 to change or update the name of the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming, in the course of my discussion with others, there was another association that had also changed its name. And probably a more important thing for you to consider is it's not typical for statute to reference essentially private organizations. And so what my amendment or what our amendment here attempts to address is to make those appointments a bit more generic. The net outcome is the same from my perspective, but to perhaps follow statutory construct in its normal form. So for one example, at the top, you see there that the appointment would be on recommendation of an association representing county commissioners rather than specifically naming the organization in which I represent. And you see that in the other proposed changes there, including changing Ms. Ligursky's from actually naming the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming to an association representing highway construction contractors. So that's the first issue that this proposed amendment attempts to address. Mr. Chairman, the second thing that it attempts to address is there's always been a question of what happens if a county misuses the funds? What is the penalty? And I'm happy to report that the County Road Construction Standards Committee met in October of this year with all of our memberships. And 21 of the 23 counties got a green light, which is what we say is great job. 2 of them got a yellow, and that's only because we were asking them for clarity on some of the uses, not because we think that it was inappropriately used. Nonetheless, we felt it was important to perhaps provide for some mechanism for you all to be aware of those issues that might occasionally come up. So we've proposed there for page 3, line 10, to insert some language that would indicate that if there is an egregious misuse of the fund, then you would receive a report. So rather than you receiving a report every year of every county on information you frankly probably don't care about, you would only receive a report if there was an egregious misuse from the board. So that's the proposal there, and it's sort of a step up of hey, if you do something wrong, county, this body's going to know and perhaps look at additional attempts to change the statute to the negative for them. Mr. Chairman, the third thing that we have done here is on page 3, line 16, and that is we included the purchase of a road or motor grader. We're suggesting to include the terms or lease because there may be times when it's more appropriate financially for a county to lease equipment rather than purchase. So giving them that option. And then finally, on page 3, line 16, taking out the terms road or. I know that some of you asked me of what is the right terminology. And my good colleague has done some research on that, and it really is motor grader. We don't need the road and we're perfectly fine with that change. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the changes that we've collaboratively worked on. I think both of our organizations are supportive of it and would ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay. Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be a question for Senator Anderson as well, but Mr. Riemann, the way I read paragraph J in the bill, which is not changed to a great extent by the proposed amendment, that allows our counties to set aside $100,000 per year. And the way I read that, if they need to, they can go a subsequent year after that, setting that aside, because I'm assuming that a motor grader is going to come right up to about that amount of money that we're looking at. Is that correct? How much do those things cost? Ms. Legursky, maybe you can help us.
Co-Chairman Landon, yes. So there are 4 main equipment dealers or large equipment dealers in the state of Wyoming. Their prices on a brand new motor grader range from $360,000 to $400,000 for a new one. When you talk about leasing or renting them, the prices vary again, depending upon the terms of the lease, how many years, different type of servicing options, and it ranged anywhere from $6,000 a month to $12,000 a month. So by allowing counties to take and reserve $100,000 a year to purchase a new motor grader or lease it, that's actually pretty fair. That's within the market value. And just to give you an idea, which may help you as well, for instance, the county that we're sitting in today has at least 11 motor graders. They do a variety of purchasing and leasing. One of the counties directly to the west of us that has 16,000 miles of road to grade, they have at least 10 motor graders. Some of the other smaller counties have obviously a lot less. So it really is dependent upon the counties on how large of equipment fleet that they have in order to maintain their county roads.
So, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you for the opportunity to follow up, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my concern is, does this give us the flexibility to allow our counties to go 2 years in a row of setting aside $100,000 each year, or 3 years in a row, if it takes that for them to get up to where they can go ahead and purchase a new motor grader? Do you see any prohibition in the language from a county doing that? I'm looking at both of you. Are we good to go on that language?
Yep, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Riemann.
Just quickly, we're going from a situation where counties couldn't take any amount, and this proposal would allow them to set aside $100,000. It's not uncommon for counties to set aside funding over the course of several years, in particular for road projects, a bridge project. You know, I was just looking at the County Road Construction and Maintenance Fund. The estimate that I provided the counties across all of the state was that they would have roughly $15 million in those accounts. So it's not as if they have a lot of money that is dedicated to this. So they will likely have to do that over the course of several years. Mr. Chairman, I guess the only other thing that I would mention here is that in terms of that County Road Construction Standards Committee, they do watch what is in the reserve. You know, how much are you holding back? And in fact, over the course of the last couple of years, we have encouraged a couple of counties to begin using their funds because they have stockpiled a good amount. They're in those two cases, counties that have the good fortune of other resources, so they can do that. But the committee does watch that and occasionally tell them, start moving, start using your money. So I think that so far the system has been working, at least from my perspective, the last couple of years.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Other questions? Representative Henderson.
I have 2 questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first one has to do with the amount on page 2, line 12 and 13, and going from 50 to 75. Why? I mean, why not 100?
Mr. Riemann?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. One, the bid requirements across the state for nearly every entity, I think, in fact, for all governmental entities, is that they bid out projects that are over $50,000. So the $75,000 is a concession on my counterpart's behalf. And we felt that that was a point at which counties under that would likely have the equipment and be able to do that work. But once you start to climb above $75,000, those are projects that likely demand having a contractor involved and should be bid out. So it's a bit of a compromise, and we're not, as an association, looking to go higher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to follow up on that, so what I'm thinking is depending on the county and the circumstances, one involves an RFP. The other scenario involves the limitation on purchase or lease of a piece of equipment. I could envision projects where maybe the 100,000 cap could be useful in both situations. As far as a project that comes up, it's within that range, if you will. So, but I understand your answer and I appreciate it. The second question is, given that we have a transportation commission, help me understand more about why we need the committee. Maybe I'm missing something.
Mr. Reeman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is a bit of history, and Katie may have more than I do, but there was a point in time where this program was administered out of the Department of Transportation. It was a decision of the counties, of the legislature, to move that to back to the local level to allow for more flexibility, and that's where it stands now. The committee that was established as part of that, which includes all the organizations that are mentioned in here, were part of that structure in order to ensure that there was some oversight. That's a group that my organization helps to manage and provide administrative support for, and push, all the letters come out from our office. So it is working right now, but part of that request for page 3, line 10 for the reporting is to let you know if something goes wrong. Perhaps we need to change that, but I think at this point in time, none of us believe that that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you. Other public testimony in the room? Anyone in the virtual realm? Heather?
Mr. Chairman, there is a Justin Schilling from Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I think he may be on for this topic. He might show himself with his camera and mic if he is.
Is he on our list?
Oh, there we are.
I'm actually on for the next agenda item, Heather.
Oh, I apologize. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, any other public testimony on 22 LSO 0192 working draft .4? Yes, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to get back with the committee to let them know that subsection C in this 24-2-110, where this entire bill takes place, subsection C indicates that the gasoline license tax revenues distributed by the Department of Transportation under the tax provision that creates them shall be sent to the county treasurers, and it lists it out. So it actually specifically says the gasoline license tax revenues. So while it is also true that there are some severance tax and alternative fuel monies from both of those other sources, as Mr. Riemann testified, the wording of that subsection J came from the subsection C in this section. So it's as the committee wishes. It could be expanded to include alternative fuels and severance tax, but it's also right there in this section of where the monies come from.
Thank you very much, Heather. Committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Co-Chair. Okay, Senator Pappas.
And I'll second.
Okay, you, Senator Pappas moved it. Okay, Mr. Co-Chair seconded it. So,
Mr. Chairman, it just struck me, that thank you for the opportunity just to throw in. I really maybe should have asked one more question. I'm looking at the back of the room. I don't think this gets in the way of our county's ability to set aside some funding. This is just an additional flexibility capability. Is that correct? I don't want the ability to set aside 100 grand for a grader to get in the way of the ability for a county to set some funds aside. And I think I'm getting an affirmative that we're okay. We're good there. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
other discussion? Okay, go through the bill. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I would just move that we move all these amendments on page 3.
Second that.
Okay, okay, and these are the amendments posed by the County Commissioners Association in concurrence with the Wyoming Contractors Association. Okay. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, that amendment is adopted. Any other changes? Amendments on page 3? Question being called. Heather, please call the roll.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Excused,
Representative Burt.
excused,
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
did Representative McGuire leave a,
Yes, I'm
Proxy.
sorry, Mr. Chairman. Representative McGuire left an aye on this bill draft
okay,
as amended.
Representative Overmueller.
Representative Overmueller did not comment on this bill draft.
okay, so that is a, would be considered an
An
excused.
Representative Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Excused,
Co-chairman Burkhart.
aye.
Co-chairman Landon.
Aye. House bill.
You can take the next one? No, you can't. That's a funding bill.
Funding, and that road maintenance isn't really a funding issue. I think we can take it, can't we?
It's not funding, it just allows.
No, the Wyoming.
Allows flexibility and funding. Yeah, let's go Senate file on county road maintenance.
Okay, that, so this bill will be, the county road maintenance fund amendments will be a Senate bill.
Okay, next one will be a House bill.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next bill for our consideration, Wyoming funding road draft. Last one of the day, and we're now into overtime, and I guess I'll decide as we go if this is going to be sudden death or not.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is 22 LSO 0209, working draft 0.6. This bill draft relates to public safety communications, and it is distributing a percentage of the county vehicle registration fees those are the fees that are collected when you register your vehicle to contribute to funding the statewide public safety communications system. And it also provides an appropriation, and that was one of the appropriations from the American Rescue Plan Act. So on page 2, this bill draft goes in and amends 31-3-103 in subsection B to just add the exception that saying that, after distributions are made pursuant to subsection M of this section, then they shall be distributed as it proceeds already existing. But subsection M is the newly created subsection. And this indicates that on July 1st of every year, beginning on July 1 of the year immediately following certification by the department to the Secretary of State that all funds appropriated during the 2022 legislative session for infrastructure development, expansion, operations, and maintenance for the statewide interoperable public safety communications system administered under 9-2-1101 through 9-2-1104 are exhausted. That was a big, huge portion. I just want to explain what it means. That this bill draft in section 2 has an appropriation from the ARPA funds. And the idea when working with the department and the counties was that as long as the ARPA funds exist, whether it's a several $1 million appropriation or very little, whatever the amount is, that this provision that we're working on here shouldn't kick in, that shouldn't be differently distributed until the ARPA funds have been used up. So that's what all that first section says is basically once the Secretary of State has certified that the ARPA funds have been used up, then, and now picking back up on line 16, page 2, line 15, page 2, fees collected pursuant to 31-3-101A, that's the registration fees. So once they've been exhausted, the ARPA funds, then registration fees shall be deposited as provided here. So the way that is that of the total fees collected, pursuant to the 31-3-A1, that's registration, county registration fees, an amount sufficient to pay the local user portion as calculated by the Department of Transportation of the user maintenance agreement for the public safety communication system shall be deposited monthly into and separately accounted for in the department's internal service fund that is specified by, there's a statute, a couple statutes that cover paying for the Wyolink maintenance and maintenance and building. Now then it specifies that monies deposited under the subsection shall only be used to maintain, reinforce, and repair the infrastructure and for software and system upgrades for the public safety communication system administered under whenever it says that the public safety communication system administered under 9-2-1101 through 9-2-1104, that means that big phrase is Wyolink currently. The amount deposited under this subsection shall be attributed to each county in the ratio that the county's total collections under the registration fees for the previous month bears to the total collections for the previous month. So just each county gives according to what it had collected. So that's the new subsection M, and it's distributing some of the registration fees for to pay for Wyolink user agreement. In section 2, this is where there's appropriated to the Department of Transportation $89,390,000 from the unexpended, unobligated American Rescue Plan Act funds. That and then this is where they came from. If you recall in your previous session, this body legislated they appropriated some through a bill that was chapter in 2020 session laws, chapter 160 or 166, section 5B. And so this is just allocating some of those funds. And then it specifies that the appropriation is for purposes of infrastructure, development, expansion, operations, and maintenance for the statewide interoperable public safety communication system commonly referred to as Wyolink. And the funds need to be spent consistent with the American Rescue Plan Act provisions. And then I'm on page 4. And it just says that any unobligated, unexpended funds may be transferred and expended upon approval by the governor for other purposes if consistent with the American Rescue Plan Act. And that they would need to go through the B11 process if that's the case. And then the subsection B at the bottom of page 4 defines American Rescue Plan Act funds, and just to specify what those are and that they come from the coronavirus state fiscal recovery fund established under, this is where the funds were placed and what the definition of them is.
Okay. Questions for staff? Everyone is perfectly clear on this.
Yeah.
Okay, now I see some questions. Mr. Co-Chair.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you baited me into it. Heather, can you go back to line 5 through line 10 on page 3? And just go over that one more time. My horse has slowed down this afternoon. I'm not quite caught up. The amount deposited under this subsection ... Tell me what that means again.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, this is that, so the amount that's deposited under the subsection, it's attributable, so each county will have taken in different vehicle registration fees. And so it's attributed when they are turning around then and paying that county's portion of, of the user maintenance agreement for WyoLink, that whatever that county's amount is, it's a portion, it's attributed to each county in the ratio that the collections came in under the registration fees.
So, Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Follow up.
So Heather, thank you. So what we're trying to do here is prohibit counties from supplanting that money. Is that really what that language is about?
Mr. Chairman, no. It
Okay.
is saying that,
Sorry.
that my county brought in $100 and your county brought in 400. So the amount, of this total aggregate amount that is paid, my county's user agreement that I owe for WyoLink, according to what the department has calculated, what I owe is $200. So then that just put $100 towards it from my proportion, and your proportion was 400. So that it's really hard to think of a hypothetical on the fly, but I wouldn't get to pull some of your 400 from your county that you collected in the fees to pay towards my bill for WyoLink. It goes in the proportion that they were collected. So like what I collected was 1/4 of what you collected. See, so from the total, when they're being allocated, it's big. Okay, well, the Heather County gave 1/4 of this, and the Landon County gave 4 times what the Heather County gave towards the amounts. Your bill might have been more too, because perhaps you're a bigger county, but it just came in the proportion that the registration fees were collected by you or me, as if we were counties.
I think I'm getting there. Thanks, Ms. Jarvis. That's the kind of thing you might get asked on the floor of the Senate or the House, and I just wanted the committee to know exactly what we're talking about there. So thank you.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Jarvis? Other questions? Again, everyone's clear on this and you can explain it. That's the way to look at your understanding of it. So, Ms. Jarvis, then I do have a question. I'm on page 2, line 17 on. An amount sufficient to pay the local user portion is calculated by the department of user maintenance agreement. So just so I'm clear, the department will calculate what that fee is in total, the county's portion of WyoLink for all intents and purposes. And I'm picking a number, and $100, just do round numbers. Then each county will be allocated a proportion of that $100 in relationship to what they took in on vehicle registration fees, correct?
Mr. Chairman, the county's payment of that amount that they owe would come from allocated according to what they took in by the registration fees. However, the amount that they owe, the committee may recall what have sometimes been referred to as faux bills over recent years that have been, I believe they've been paid from the permanent mineral something fund.
Yes, there was money set aside.
But they've been issued to the different users of WyoLink. So basically saying, if you were going to be paying for this user A, then your bill would be this. Now, I believe that it has been turned around and been paid from that maybe the permanent, I don't want to say where it's been paid from, but I think it was a mineral trust fund. And so that amount, the department has been calculating, it's been allocating the contribution or the amount that according to a user maintenance agreement for the public safety communication system. So their amount is based on, I think, usage and things that they can tell you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions for staff? All right, seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this? Anyone else wish to speak on this? Mr. Raymond, Ms. Little, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kelly Little with the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Just a quick reminder that this bill is a result of a request by this committee to find a long-term funding solution for WyoLink. We convened a working group over the interim to look at a myriad of possible options to fund WyoLink into the future. At your meeting in Rollins, this bill was requested to divert current county or local vehicle registration fee revenue to fund WyoLink. Once we started looking at the logistics of this, as there's been some questions even today about it, we ran into a handful of unforeseen and maybe unintended consequences that going this direction may cause. We are supportive of the bill, but we have proposed an amendment, and I think that has been distributed.
What? Mr. Co-Chair, take it for a minute while I find that. I know I have.
Okay, so
I
Ms.
have it right
Little,
here.
thank you. Wyoming County Commissioners
I have it.
Association, LSO 209, proposed amendment. You should have that in front of your.
Oh,
Yes, I have it. So you should have it. If you don't,
Gradually, everyone's getting up to speed. Might be in your stack there, Senator. Okay, there you go. You got it. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. Take it away, Mr. Chairman.
okay, so, all right, I think everyone has that amendment now.
okay, great. Thank,
0.6.
Yes,
yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Essentially deletes the whole bill.
So what the amendment does would be to remove the language in section 1 of the bill to divert the registration fee revenue. The reason that we are proposing this is in section 2, where there is a request in that section for an appropriation of the ARPA funding to help in the short term bridge the gap for funding the WyoLink system, and that includes the maintenance portion of that. The reason we're requesting this is we feel like we have slightly missed the mark. Obviously, I spoke to some unintended consequences once we started discussing with the Department of Transportation, just some things that could cause problems, and that's something we don't want to do is rush legislation through that may cause issues down the road. If we have some breathing room, we'd like to be able to take the opportunity to use that time to perfect a solution that really works in the long term for funding this very important state system.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
So how long have the county commissioners been working on this?
Well, for this,
The whole funding issue?
the whole funding issue. So it's been a couple years. This specific request or this specific attempt to find long-term funding was through this interim, but we've had several different options that we have not been successful in the past. But this, and what we're saying, I'd like to say, like, we are still committed to finding a long-term funding solution. And that may be actually the solution that's in this bill. We would just like to make sure that we're not rushing through anything that could cause unintended consequences. We'd just like to be able to take some time to perfect the solution, if that's going to be the long-term way to fund it.
So maybe I get right to the point. pretty much what your amendment does is deletes the bill. I mean, in all reality, that's what it does. What is your method to fund the county's use of the system? Because this will now go all the way at least until the 2023 general session. How do you propose to fund the county's share in the meantime?
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can
Please.
step in and offer some comments. First off, your frustration is our frustration. We had hoped to be able to go through this interim and find the silver bullet that could solve this issue that frankly, a lot of us have been working on for nearly a decade. I know you in particular. Mr. Chairman, yes, this takes out the particular funding mechanism approach that we discussed in Rollins and only leaves the portion that deals with the American Rescue Plan Act. Now, I do want to state that this is not the only option that's on the table at this point in time. If you look at the governor's proposed budget, he does have a number of provisions of WyoLink that he suggests funding from the general fund, in particular for new towers and certain equipment pieces. But in that budget, he also suggests continuing to fund the local portion of the match using the mineral royalty grant. It's not the permanent mineral trust fund, it's the mineral royalty grant, which is available to locals right now. That's what has been funding the local portion for some time. There remains funds in that program. The governor continues to recommend use of that fund. So there are, in addition to this bill, assuming it was supported, there is also the backstop of what exists there. And as Ms. Little said, we're not abandoning the notion that we're going to continue to work on a long-term sustainable solution. We want that as much as you do. We just didn't get there.
Mr. Reedman, we do understand you're only bringing the position of your organization here. You know, both of you are the messenger. We understand that. So, and as you said, we've been working on this for a long time.
Since we were on appropriation.
Yes, since the co-chair and I were on appropriations at least. So continue with your presentation. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay. I think we were about ready to wrap it up. I would just say we do support section 2 of this bill. That would be the appropriation of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to kind of bridge that gap over the next couple years till we can find a long-term solution. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Reedman, Ms. Little, Mr. Co-chair?
Thanks. And once again, we do understand all you're doing is bringing the message. So of this 89 million, help me. Did I hear you mention that some of this funding you're suggesting would be used to pay the local portion, or are we talking mineral, the mineral grant funding? None of this rescue funding can be used to pay the county's portion, can it not? You're not suggesting that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's exactly what the governor's office, we and others have been looking at, is an attempt that would pay for the maintenance agreement that underlies the system, which is where the local portion comes out. So I think, yes, in fact, we are suggesting that that those funds be used to pay it over the next short period here. You know, if I'm being really frank with you, this is a state system. It needs to be supported by the state. Yes, we're a part of that equation. A lot of our frustration is that often these approaches towards the local government contribution don't take into account the towers that local governments, that my counties have stood up, that they also have their own maintenance agreements around that contribute to the system. So I apologize for going down that rabbit hole a little bit, but yes, we are suggesting that the ARPA funding over the course of the next period, this is a unique opportunity, pay for that maintenance agreement.
So, Mr. Chairman, you know,
Please,
with
Mr.
all due
Co-Chair.
respect, Mr. Reaman, that it feels a little bit like kick the can. I mean, I was excited going into this interim, thinking that we had an opportunity, really a one-time opportunity that we haven't ever had in my tenure to really shore up the infrastructure out across this state, including taking care of our local governments with equipment and infrastructure there. And I totally get the argument. It's state or it's county or it's state or it's municipality or whatever. And that's going to be ongoing forever, I'm sure. A little bit of my frustration is that we use this one-time money to kick us down the road to 23, 24, taking care of a share that I thought maybe could be taken care of, and we could really take advantage of this one-time funding. So we'll be 23, 24, we'll be right back here exactly as we are tonight saying, well, what are we going to do for long-term funding? That's a little tough. I got to swallow that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I can respond to that.
Absolutely.
I don't think that we're at cross purposes. I think that's exactly what we're suggesting is use the ARPA funding for this one-time opportunity to move us down the road. Even if you look at the way that this bill is constructed, it already suggests that we're going to kick down the solution until after those ARPA funds are exhausted, which go beyond the 23-24 legislative session. So what we're suggesting is let us perfect a solution for the long-term sustainable component of this, rather than handing you something that really is no good, that really doesn't get us there for this next legislative session. I don't want you to be in a difficult position when you go before your respective bodies and have to defend this. This bill doesn't get us there.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may add to that, I just want to reiterate that we're committed to finding that solution, and I don't think we're going to wait. It's not our intention to wait until the ARPA funding is, exhausted, and all of a sudden, here we are sitting in the same position several years down the road. I think the solution that's in this bill, it's an idea and something that just needed to be perfected, and maybe a little more time to look at the different ramifications. We definitely don't want to cause problems. So we definitely want it to be something that's good and can carry the system into the future for funding it.
Thank you,
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you too. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Then I have one. Would it be fair to say that if we pass this bill as is, that would light a fire under your members? I know that's a loaded question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to understand what the question is. If you pass this bill as it is, no amendments.
No amendments, no changes. Would that do you feel that would bring your members to the table to discuss real solutions?
Mr.
Like
Chairman,
I said, I've dealt with this for 10 years at least. I'm frustrated as you are.
Mr. Chairman, what I'll suggest is my members are already at the table. We didn't have to propose being the ones to lead this working group. We did that. We're continuing to do that. We're committed to the work and finding the solution. Is this a gun to our head if you pass it as is? No. I mean, the reality is these funds are distributed just like any other property taxes are. So ultimately, if you dig down into it, the schools end up paying 70% of the amount that comes out of those fees. The counties account for about 17%, and the municipalities about 8% or so. So is this a gun to our head? I just don't see it there, and I don't think we need to go that way. We're already committed to this process.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Any other public testimony? Anybody in the virtual world?
Yes, Mr. Schilling is on line.
Okay. Was he on the list? Did he sign up by yesterday?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that he ran into some issues with the link and was contacting the LSO office and there was a cross between the communication with them and us to get him the link to communicate. So I don't think he is on your list, but I believe that it was not for lack of trying. I don't know
Okay.
for sure.
All right.
on that.
Well, I'll admit him then.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes. Proceed.
Justin Schilling with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. Along with the county commissioners, our members have concerns about the solution proposed in this bill for long-term funding of WildLink. As you said, this has been a years-long process trying to find a permanent funding source. A couple of sessions ago, obviously, monies were diverted from the mineral royalty grant program that had benefited local governments to continue with the operation of WildLink. At the end of a years-long process, the solution proposed in this bill is the simplest of solutions, and that was to just make us pay it without creating any type of new revenue source or any other more creative permanent funding option. Obviously, all of our municipalities share in the state's concerns with ongoing budget cuts and tightening budgets. And this is one revenue stream that it's another revenue stream that there's, this death by 1,000 cuts. Obviously, there's other proposed legislation working its way through the interim that proposes marginal cuts to municipal funding that trickles down from the state. So we agree with the counties that we do have the opportunity with the language in this bill to continue to work on a more on a solution that doesn't put us in any tighter position moving forward fiscally. So with that, I would stand for any questions, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Schilling? Any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Any other public comment? With that, I'll close public comment. Committee? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just wade in with some random comments, I guess. This is a bill that I thought was important throughout the interim. We knew this funding was coming and that we'd have an opportunity, as I said, to really step up, I thought, and assist in some infrastructure needs that we always have. It's always been a source of heartburn that we have to support this communication system out across 98,000 square miles. I get that, and I've been a part of it. We sat on appropriations and debated those kinds of budget questions. And so I was excited that we had this opportunity. I just, honestly, I would like, no matter what, if we can, even if it's amended to the point of that's being suggested by our county commissioners, to go forward with some kind of bill, because it's really up to the legislative branch to spend the money. And I respect every suggestion that the governor gives us on whatever, but it's really up to us to decide how we want this money spent. That would carry a lot of weight from this committee if we felt like it at least is money that can go to WildLink. On the other hand, it is disappointing that that we haven't gotten any further down the road on the funding issue. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move the bill.
Moved by Anderson, seconded by Henderson. Okay. Discussion on the bill. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the amendment by the County Commissioners Association in completion, page 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. Is there a second on that amendment? Okay, seconded by O'Hearn. Discussion on the amendment. So what that amendment does is, in effect, we go forward with section 2 and nothing else. And here we go again.
Mr. Chairman, no, we have section 1 starting on line 11, page 3, and then we have section 2 on page 4.
Senator, again, what was that? Please.
We continue to have on page 3, line 11, we change that to section 1, and that is that section. And then on page 4, we have section 3 is changed to section 2.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
but we delete what is all currently section 1.
yes, yes.
Okay, discussion? Question on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? No. Okay, let's have a show of hands. All in favor of the amendment? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed, no?
One more.
One,
Mr. Chairman, we're looking to see what Mr. Baker, Representative Baker had.
Oh, he doesn't know about the amendment.
Did he have the
Yeah, I'm opposed.
opposed to the amendment? Okay.
so okay, all opposed, no. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did Representative Obermuller or Representative McGuire leave a proxy?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller did not have a comment on this bill, so he would be excused. And Representative McGuire was, well, he was a nay on the bill. And then, yes, he was a nay on the bill, and I don't know about
Okay,
the.
But he didn't, he didn't vote on
He
the
voted
amendment.
on the bill and left any amendments to us, so. All right, so again, with that confusion, all in favor, please raise your hand for me. Please, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all opposed? No, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that amendment is adopted. Okay. Question on the bill. Heather, please call the roll.
Senator Anderson. Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
No.
Representative Brown.
Excused,
Representative Burt.
excused,
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
and did he leave? He left an aye vote,
Mr. Chairman, he left a nay vote.
nay vote. Okay.
Representative Obermuller.
He's
Mr. Chairman, they're not neglected. He chose to not comment on the bill.
So he's excused.
He's excused.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Excused.
Co-chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Co-chairman Landon.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. That will be a House bill because it's revenue.
Thank goodness for that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, I've got amendments coming.
It's
So,
got a ways to go with that.
yes. Okay. With that, we wrapped up all the business we had on the agenda. We're only 40 minutes late. Not bad, considering we started 4 hours
You
late.
spurred the horse pretty hard there. Yeah, that's-
Um,
I'm
So-
impressed.
Heather, at this point, why don't you, we've given you some things to do, some directives. Would you go over those with us so we're sure we have that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. Chairman, there is the request and meeting for Management Council. That's already taken care of in the letter that you two reviewed earlier today. There are some bill drafts and another letter that came from the discussion on the committee plans to discuss at a meeting on the morning of January 11th, unless that has changed. It's a Tuesday.
That's a Tuesday, Heather, and yeah, once those bill drafts are ready, the co-chairman and I will look over those, and then you can send those to the committee. And
Okay.
we will have a virtual meeting on the 11th.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, and does the committee wish to designate a time right now so we can just place it in there? It's a Zoom meeting, correct?
Let's do 8:30.
8:30, okay.
Mr. Co-chairman, does that work for you?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep. We're gonna lose the.
Okay.
senator.
We understand that.
Halfway around the world, but
Do you want a recap of the bills and requests for that meeting, or are we just, okay,
No,
okay.
I think we have those.
So then okay, there is, Mr. Chairman, there is a memorandum to JAC that requests appropriation to move forward this session with the TIS, the Transportation Information System. And WIDOT is in front of JAC on December 17th, so that will be moving forward with that memorandum by then. There is Mr. Olson with Aeronautics Division referred to another report. So I was going to get it and link to it for the committee. He had referred to that he would provide it. The other items, Mr. Chairman, are some future interim topics. And they mostly surrounded safety, whether it was a primary seatbelt law, DUI laws, backseat passenger container DUI laws, other highway safety laws, more troopers on the road. And there were several items that went into that highway safety, but that was for to kind of be reserved for the interim topic meeting that will take place sometime towards the end of the session.
Yes.
And then otherwise, the committee did sponsor several bills. And I've called those out right at the moment, but I can.
That's okay.
Okay.
I think we wrote them down.
Okay.
Heather, do you know off the top of your head how many bills we now have for the committee? How many committee bills we have?
Mr. Chairman, I can tell us that. Okay, there we go. Just waiting for the computer system to work. Okay, Mr. Chairman, it appears as though
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, while Heather takes a look and gets us a exact count, just a couple of final thoughts. We will have that half-day Zoom meeting where we can look at military bills primarily, but just wanted to salute the committee. It's been an interesting time that we've gone through, and even into this interim, we've been dealing with stuff. So that said, I think we've done some good work. We have a lot of bills that we're going to take to the session. I hope we can represent them well, because that's part of what we do in our committee work. We represent constituencies. And I don't know about all of you, but I learned an awful lot about not only the military situation, but the Department of Transportation. And I look forward to some of those policy discussions that we'll have. So I just wanted to thank the committee. Thank you for all your work.
And I would echo that, Mr. Co-Chairman. You guys, all of you did great. I mean, this was a heavy workload if you look at it. And we even had a few things in there that we hadn't counted on. You did good. Thank you. Thank you for the participation, the help, the decorum especially. You know, some of these things could have gotten a little out of hand and they didn't, thanks to your hard work. So as chairman, I appreciate it. So, and for staff too, great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I believe that the committee has elected to sponsor 15 bills.
How many? 15?
15.
Well, you did good work. Now you get to handle them on the floor. Because the co-chairman and I really don't do that. 15. And remember, we have a potential for another 4. So much for we only wanted 10 bills out of the committee this interim.
2/3 might get a couple of them. You never know.
Yeah.
Chairman. All 15 may not clear the hurdle.
No. Any other business? Any other business? Any feedback on the committee meeting? Any thoughts? Other than everybody wants to leave. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we are adjourned. And remember to give one of us your expense report.